Right. I got a repeat offender on the show for y'all today. My functional medicine doctor, Doc Jacque. Welcome back to That Sex Chick.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here and
Mhm.
happy to talk about you today. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, everyone is just so interested in what the heck I'm doing. No, I'm kidding. Though I think some of you are actually interested in what I have done from the holistic health perspective. I think that people are curious, which I find mildly to moderately entertaining, that people want to know my opinion on things and want to know what I've chosen and why I've chosen it. And, when I take a step back, it makes sense to me because I also like people that I follow and I respect and all of that are on the internet. If they say that they like something, I'm like, oh, let me look it up. So it makes sense because I do that too, you know?
Yeah. Go figure your followers would do the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And, I always want to encourage, I don't push lots of people and lots of different products and any of that stuff. And so like when I really find someone that has helped me in a big way, then I want to showcase them and I want to highlight them. No matter what they've got going on, whether it's like directly connected to sex or not, like this just happens to be a portion. What you do affects well, depending on how you look at it, one very specific bracket of sex that's had, which is for fertility and to make babies. But also, I think this is for people feeling good. And when you
Mhm.
feel good and your hormones are balanced and everything's firing effectively and you're not bloated and your hormones are doing the good thing and all that, and then it's like you want to you have a great sex drive, you have a healthy sex drive and feel good in your body. So, I would say the fertility piece is just one little section of the under the that sex chick umbrella, but really it affects everything, I think, and how you show up, how you feel in your body, your connectability to your partner, irritability, your energy levels, etc. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah. On all fronts on that. Yeah. I mean, you can't really feel sexy if you're bloated all the time, you're constipated, or if you have no energy at all, if you're constantly stuck in that fight or flight state, your body doesn't want to have sex. So yeah, in order to increase that intimacy and be able to have a better relationship with your spouse, you got to work on all these things and be the best version of yourself.
Yeah. So when I had you on the show last time, which was quite a while now,
Mhm.
we weren't working together. I just
Yep.
wanted to
At
talk
the time.
about holistic naturopathic medicine. Like I just wanted to have the general conversation of how that plays into fertility because at the time I was preconception. Like it was the
Mhm.
window of time where we knew it was coming, but we weren't really there yet as far as trying to make a baby. And so when we experienced the miscarriage at the end of 2022, I think I can't remember how soon after that happened that I reached out to you because I got to a place where I basically was like, first off, I knew my life and how I'd set up my work and my business and all of that was just really overwhelming, and I was trying to heal from something that happened in my body and of course happened emotionally for me as well. But I also had all of these commitments and things that I had to do with my work at the time. And it was just really me pouring from an empty cup. So I knew that my stress was really high. But I also, was experiencing this, going through this miscarriage and healing. And a lot of the stuff on the internet said, it's normal. It happens. It's a part of the process. And here I am, speaking to people in my community, my extended community, and they're like, so many people had that happen, especially before baby number one or in between baby one and two. And so it was reassuring in some ways to have conversations with other women that were saying, like it also happened to me and I went on to have healthy babies and it's tough and you're going to get through it. And that was really relieving. And so like at the first wave on an emotional front, I felt somewhat settled. Like, okay, this is normal. It's not me necessarily. Like, we don't know that unequivocally that like something is wrong, so to speak, with me and my fertility. Like, this is a very common thing. It happens super early. And so I was trying to like reach my peace with that. But then I also had this drive, and this won't come as a surprise to you, Doc Jacques, or to any of our listeners, that like I have a little bit of like an anxious, like seemingly erotic kind of tendency where I'm like, I just need to figure this out.
Yep. I love that.
And I'm working with it. I have a much better relationship with it now than maybe ever in my life. And I have a lot of great things in my life to thank for some of those tendencies. So it's not all bad. But anyway, I basically just got to this place where I was like, okay, I know that it's common, but is there something I can do? I really wanted to feel like I was being proactive, and I felt like I was being proactive ahead of time because I was working with functional medicine prior to the, wanting to conceive for the year beforehand. And so I just like felt in this place of like, okay, it's been a while since I've checked on what's going on within me. And if there's something I can optimize to prevent grief from occurring again, I want to do it. And so I was kind of straddling this line of soothing myself and telling me, don't take it personally. And there wasn't anything that I could do to prevent it. And then on the other side of the line, if there's something I can optimize to prevent it from happening again on any level, even if it's just a mental placebo effect, I would like to do it. And so I messaged you, I sent you a DM on Instagram, and I'll let you fill in some blanks after that.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, you sent the message on Instagram, and like what we talked about on the previous episode together. When anybody comes to me, whether it's for health or for fertility in general, there are three main things or three main pillars that I'm going to want to uncover, or stones that we want to overturn. So the big things when it comes to fertility is I have what I call the fertility triad. So it's either that you're too stressed, you're too infected, or you're toxic. And that could be something from mold toxicity. We talked about, you're growing up and your environment back then
Oh, yeah.
versus right now, right? So we went through that, and I knew you to be a very successful entrepreneur as well. And that, whether people want to admit it or not, that's high stress. So I knew that there's at least two buckets that we were going to have that were already starting to overflow based off of what I knew about you. And then we ran a stool test, which to me is one of the most overlooked categories when it comes to fertility, but it's also one of the most highly researched areas with fertility that I don't think a lot of people know about. And so there are certain infections or certain environments. I mean, even just having the whole term leaky gut can increase your risk of miscarriage or increase your risk for infertility just from having an inflamed gastrointestinal tract with some gaps in there. So we tested you, we found out where you were, and we had the unknown known. We flipped over that rock, we had some infections in there, we started attacking it, and then you got pregnant.
Yeah, wild. It worked.
Yeah, go
You
figure,
know,
right?
and I have a doctor that she's only a gynecologist now. She's not in obstetrics anymore. But one of my favorite lines that she says is trust your healthy body. Trust your healthy body. And so, I want to make sure that when I hear your healthy body, that I actually feel like I could say, yes, healthy body. I track macros and I want to make sure that I'm getting enough protein intake and I'm conscientious of sugar intake and certain kinds of fats and certain, and I look at that. I'm like, okay, and I'm active and I lift a couple to a few times a week and I go on long walks. And so like when I hear like trust your healthy body, I can take a sigh of relief and go, yeah, my healthy body, because I've been proactive with it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Versus passive in this and just like being a victim to circumstances like, oh, well, now I'm experiencing whatever I'm experiencing and I play no role in it. It's not, for me anyway, in this situation, that's not the
Yeah.
case. I know that is the case for other people, that it is a genetic situation or it is um, I want to say deformity, but something that you're born with. Is that the term
Mhm.
to use? Deformity? Not deformity.
In terms of increased risk of fertility,
Like, let's
infertility.
say, so I have a friend that was born without a vas deferens. And I
Hmm.
have a friend that was dealing with uterine septum. So there was like tissue in
Okay.
between her uterus. And so some of these things
Sure.
were things that they were born with,
Hmm.
versus they could be proactive with them. Well, one that's born without a vas deferens, well, his wife has to go through IVF every time they want to have a baby because he doesn't have the
Right.
tube that will bring the sperm into his
Sure.
ejaculate. And for the
Yeah.
uterine septum, recognizing that there wasn't anything she could do for her health in order to get that to go away, she actually had to have surgery. So
Mhm.
what I'm saying is I'm separate to those people. I've discovered over like testing and health and all that, just like looking at things. There wasn't anything that I was born with or that genetically was making it difficult. It was stuff
Mhm.
that I could control, my health wise. That's what I
Right.
meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congenital, I think, is what you were looking for.
Congenital. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for. I was like, deformity. That sounds harsh. Do we still
Yeah.
say
Sound
that?
sound a little harsh there.
I
Yeah.
know that was weird. I was like, I don't have another word for that. Anyway, so I would love to hear. So you've got your trifecta, which seems to be really effective. And, I have one of my best friends. who or one of my dear friends is doesn't live in Austin anymore, and I'm really sad about it. She's a Pacific Northwestern girl through and through. But I know they're on their preconception or journey as well.
Mhm.
And she listened to the first podcast that you were on, and then her and her
Yeah.
husband started
Mhm.
working with you. And she says, like when I talk with her, she's like, I feel amazing. And I'm like, get
Yeah.
it, girl. She's like, even if this wasn't in the direction for fertility, I feel so much better, to the point where she was like, I didn't realize I felt so bad. Like I got
Yeah.
used to feeling bad. And so anyway, let's kind of double click. I show up to you. I've got a couple of buckets that without testing, you're like, she's probably got a little like red flag over here and probably a couple over there and maybe like one and a half over there.
Mhm.
What are the tests? Like, what did they test for?
Yeah.
And then eventually, like when those results came in, how did we navigate that?
Yeah, so the test that we ran, do you want me to be specific for you in particular?
Yeah. Yeah. If that
Okay.
feels good to you.
Feels good with me.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
So the three main ones that we ran for you there, again, based off your health history from the past, because that's something that you always want to see where people came from. And so one of the things we ran on you was a mycotoxin panel, so mold toxin. So we wanted to see, do you have any level of toxicity within the body? And then when we tested that, we had a couple of things that did show up. There was the aflatoxin M1 that showed up on that test there. It's a known mold toxin that comes from a family known as Aspergillus and Penicillium, and it's a highly inflammatory mold toxin. So that was one thing that showed up. So that's a positive find where we had the toxicity bucket was starting to fill up with that particular one.
Yeah. And I,
Then
I
we
think I
ran.
want to
Oh, go
pause
ahead.
just for a second under mold, because this is one
Yeah,
that I think it's overlooked a lot. And so
yeah,
let me just like quickly tell you all like where I come from is a very wet place. So I'm from New Orleans. I've lived in houses that have flooded my whole life because I have lived below the sea level. So I asked my mom, Mom, do you think, and I'm going through all this health stuff. I'm like, Mom, do you think there's mold in the house? And she goes, Of course there's mold in the house. Like no big deal. She goes, What are we gonna
yeah,
do? Mold happens. And I'm like panicking. And I'm like, oh my God,
yeah.
I'm like just molding on the inside. Like I've been breathing this my whole life, but I
Yeah.
have tested for mold a couple of times and I haven't had
Mhm.
anything. At like the first round, I had a lot. And I also um, went through protocol for that however long ago. And so I was really nervous that I would still have lots of high markers. And so for us to only see that marker on it felt
Mhm.
a bit relieving, but still, it would have been cool if there was nothing on it?
I mean, yeah, that would have been
Yeah. So
optimal.
where do you find aspergillus? It's on food, right?
So
Peanuts.
aspergillus and penicillium, yeah, you can find it in foods, dried vine fruits, wine, peanuts for sure, different types of oh my gosh, like rice can have it. A lot of the times, like aspergillus is going to be found in food sources, but usually if it's under a certain amount, if you look at like the ochratoxin score in particular, it'd be like less than 20 or less than 15 or so, would be more correlated to like food. Um, but aspergillus and penicillium is one of the most commonly found molds in homes. Like we were just up in Maine and I had to leave a house. We checked in within 30 minutes. I felt violently ill and I was just went on searching mode and I went and I looked up at the top of the bedroom that we were going to be staying in. And there was some mold deposits that were on the side of the wall right above the bed. And then there was water damage in the paint. The paint was actually peeling off, like water was actually like rippling down through the side of the house. And we had to bolt out. And we've been in this whole battle with this company. We're like, hey, like we need our money. Like we couldn't stay there. I was like falling apart. And
Oh.
so a lot of people, and even in Maine, they're like, well, it's a lake house. So you have to anticipate there's going to be mold and things there. And like, no, like we have to stop normalizing that mold is just a thing that's going to happen. I mean, if we go back all the way into like biblical times, it was written in that mold was a plague on the home. And you'd actually have a priest that would come and like figured out if your mold, if the house was like livable or not, or if they
Old
just burn
school
it down and start
remediation. This
yeah,
is
burn
like
the damn thing down and
the
start
original
over.
remediation.
Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a horrible one and it's sneaky too
Mm.
because it could just be this subclinical mold where you just walk around with a little bit of brain fog. or it could be, you know, you constantly have UTIs or candida overgrowth, or you have some gut issues. And then you can have a specific division of the Aspergillus penicillium, which I think we talked about last time, the mycophenolic acid, MPA. And mycophenolic acid is one that's seeing the high risk of candida infections, but a high risk of miscarriages. And if you do get pregnant with mycophenolic acid, you actually increase your risk of congenital malformations. So instead of deformities, you can say malformation. It sounds a
Thank
little
you.
bit nicer.
Thanks.
Yeah. So having these things, if you've ever been in a wet environment, and I know now we live in Arizona, and I love Arizona because it's like the risk of mold there is minimal. However, it can still be there. You know, I knew a family that was in Arizona and they left Arizona because they had a pipe that burst behind one of their cabinets. And as long as there's water running through your house, you can still be at risk for mold. So don't be dumb about it. Be honest about it. Is your house up to par? And do you feel bad going into your house, especially if you're on vacation somewhere you come back? Does your health plummet when you come back into your home? That's
Yeah.
the first sign that there may be something wrong or something affecting you while you're in your house.
Ugh. Yeah, and I have some friends that as soon as they go into a home, they know. Like they know. One gets a low
Mhm.
level headache and the other one's like has some other symptoms that come up almost instantly. And so
Mhm.
we travel as a group.
Yeah.
And that's a very important thing. You know, she's on it. Like, I want to make sure when was the house built? I'm asking questions about if they've had any leakages and if there was any, pipes or leaks, how was that handled? And so she goes out of her way to ask those questions. And we're all so grateful for it for sure.
Mhm.
Because it's not just her. But and the thing was that she never had an issue with it until she did have an issue with it and was in an environment that was really bad. And now it's like her little alarm bell. She's
Yeah.
like a canary in a coal mine kind of situation.
Yeah.
And so, we go into a place and she's like, oh no, we got to get out of here,
Yeah. Yeah.
So and so it's big, and for different friends, I think that they've had different issues with it, everything from neurological issues
Yeah.
to brain fog and just feeling really, really bad and feeling sick consistently. And so that's not a sleeper. And I totally agree with what you said. Like we've got to stop normalizing it. So I told my mom. So I go and stay occasionally, and they love when I come into town. But I exclusively stay with my sister, which I'm allergic to cats. Which I don't know how to fix that. That would be great. I'm not like severely allergic to cats. I just like sneeze and itch and it's
Mhm.
it's and cough
Yeah.
and all the things.
Sure.
Um, and they've got inside outside cats that just kind of peruse in and out.
Yeah.
But I take that over how I feel when I go at my mom's house because not only has
Sure.
there been lots of like rain and water and storm damage, but there's also been a bathroom leakage that they let go on for a really long time and didn't fix for a really long time. And I think that just after that, there's just like been a hole in the ceiling, the leak and the whatever. And I'm just like, I can't be in here. It literally smells like must, like it's so strong. And they're like, well, we put the fans on. I'm like, the
Yeah.
fans? I'm like, that's not, I'm like, mom, so now that I'm pregnant, I go, Mom, I love you so much. And this baby means, everything to her. It's the first
Mhm.
grandchild in 18 years, basically.
Mhm.
My stepsister has a 10-year-old. So I'll say, this is the first grandbaby. This is the first baby in the family in over 10 years.
Yeah.
And I go, Mom, I love you so much. I'm not bringing that baby in that house. And so she goes, all right, I'm telling Ernie, that's my stepdad. I'm telling Ernie, we got to get this shit sorted now. I'm like, that's
Awesome.
what it takes. She's like, my grandbaby needs to know me. You need to be able to come
Yeah.
and stay. I'm like, I agree, mom. So she wouldn't,
Yeah.
she will not do it for her children. She will, because to her, I could be full of shit still, but for
Yeah.
grandbabies, she will do just about anything.
Yeah. Almost makes
you
me
know?
tear up a little bit. My man, like again, bringing this child into the world is not just going to help, you know, you and Jordan have something amazing and magical, but it's also going to help with your parents, you know, your mom and your stepdad. They're going to be in a healthier environment, which means their health is going to improve too. So I love seeing this kind of ripple effect from you taking care of your health is now affecting and impacting other people in a very positive way. This is awesome.
Yeah, and I don't know if she's really convinced, like for her own health,
Yeah.
but to see
Yeah.
her grandchild,
Yeah.
that's the motivator. And so I'll take it.
Yeah.
I won't sit there and try. I'm like, but you need to listen to this podcast episode, mom. Like she's just not going to do it. So, and I love her
Fair
dearly. I
enough.
love them all dearly. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, okay, so we can move on from mold. That was the one. It
Fair enough.
felt important to share like some of the backstory for the mold
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. So the other test we like to run as well is the Dutch test. So we run a Dutch plus in particular. So the plus is going to be a salivary adrenal analysis. So you're going to have what's known as a cortisol awakening response. So what is your cortisol doing as soon as you wake up? Within 30 minutes, are you going up by at least 50%? And then are you coming down and fitting in between the lines throughout the day? And then the Dutch piece of it is going to map out like all of your hormones. You know, how does your progesterone look? How does your estradiol look? Your estrone, your estriol, and it maps out every single one of the hormones that you have as a woman, and as well as for a male if you're doing a male panel. What's important to note too is when you do the Dutch test, is going to be a urine analysis. So you're able to get the estrogen metabolites as well. So, like the smaller divisions of the estrogens, and you're able to see where the breakdowns are occurring. And we talk about three different phases of estrogen detox. We have phase one, two, and three. And so this test will show you phase one and phase two and how those are doing. So when we looked at your, and I'm laughing as I'm doing it, but when we looked at your adrenals, you basically, your
Bad.
adrenals were asleep like all day long. They were just
It was
flat
bad.
line the whole way
Bad.
across. So that would be more indicative of what, the layperson would call like adrenal fatigue. So like a phase three of adrenal fatigue. Now, phase one is the first level problem. Phase two, then phase three. Phase four is like your adrenals just don't produce cortisol anymore. It's typically going to be autoimmune related. So when it comes to preparing, just preparing to be a parent, I don't want anybody having adrenals that look like yours. No offense, Alexa,
Oh,
but I want you to
I
have energy, right? Because
understand.
there's going to be, it's not just about the conception piece. Even if you did conceive, and I think this is important for those who are going through with like IVF and things, you really still have to work on your health, because when baby comes, that means you're going to be up at night, and if your sleep isn't good and your energy is not good, then your adrenals are going to consistently break down. And so once you have that magnificent baby that you've always wanted, if your health can't keep up, then it's a lot of times it can actually turn into resentment towards a child because you don't have energy anymore. Then you're fighting with your spouse, and then you're gaining weight, or you have postpartum depression, and it's just all of these emotional roller coasters that you are involved with. So working just from like a, hey, I'm thinking about getting pregnant, you better make sure that your adrenals are up to par, so that way you have the energy to keep up with the little kid when it comes. The other piece too with the pregnant or the cortisol, but the pregnenolone steal or the cortisol steal, is when your adrenals are tanked, right? Your body feels as though you're constantly being attacked by a bear, or there's always a bear lurking around the corner. So if you just think from a logical standpoint, why would your body conceive and get you pregnant if it feels like a bear is about to kill you? It's not going to do that. It would
It's
make
got to
no sense.
prioritize. Yeah, it has to prioritize. I
Exactly.
have to keep you safe. We can't be
Yes.
doing this other thing. Like all the resources have to go towards fighting or flighting or
Yeah,
fleeing
exactly. Yeah, for fleeing.
for
Yeah,
fleeing.
so so when you have that type of adrenal response, you have to make sure that you bring it up, so that way your body feels safe, right? Surrendering and feeling safe, and then your body can say, "Okay, now Alexa feels safe. Her adrenals don't have to constantly be stealing the cortisol or the pregnenolone. Now she can have more hormonal function. She can have progesterone. Her cycle will be better. Her estrogen will be balanced. She'll have energy. She'll have higher testosterone to be able to even be in the mood to have sex." And when you were talking about, the spousal relationship of things, if you're in that fight or flight as well, it's really difficult to get into the mood to have sex. You're tired. And even if you force yourself to get into the mood, even with hours and hours of foreplay, if you want to, you can still have a difficult time, because all of the fluid, all of the energy, all the everything, whatever you want to call it, is going to pull away from those reproductive organs, and it could be painful. And I've known a lot of women that suffer with this. They'll have painful intercourse, but they're afraid to tell their husband or their spouse about it, because they feel like they just have to kind of suck it up and go through with it. And nobody should really have to feel that way in this. So getting your adrenals to feel good, getting your adrenals to give you energy, give you the hormones that you're supposed to, will fully optimize who you are. And then, like you said, with the healthy body, healthy body or healthy people have healthy kids. So the healthier you are, the healthier your child's going to be as well. If there's
Mm.
anything you want to add to that.
No, that was great. You know your
Yeah.
stuff. You know your
No,
stuff. know your stuff, which was why I came to you. I was like, nobody's
Yeah.
described this in a way and has been as cool as you.
Yeah.
You know,
Appreciate the
like
coolness, but
I've had
yeah.
other people that I've like spoken with. I'm like, I don't know. I still don't know. I've like spent so much money. I'm like, I still don't know
Yeah.
what I'm doing here. And
Yeah.
like they smell funny. No, I'm just kidding. I just made that up. I just made that up.
Fair
Nobody
enough.
smells funny.
Sorry to anybody in
Um,
the past, but
no, 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 no. I'm just making that part up for fun.
yeah.
So that Dutch test was the doozy out of the
Hmm.
tests.
Yeah.
But it felt so purposeful when I finally like opened the box and I read all the instructions and I was like, all right, I have to suck on this um little cotton thing and then I got to put it in
Yeah.
the
The cotton
tube
swab there.
and then I got to put it in the freezer and then I got to pee in a cup and then I got to dip this paper in it and then I got to let it dry. And I just had like dried pieces of pea paper all over the counter. And I'm like, Jordan,
Yep.
just don't even, and doing the myco or the GI lab, which we haven't
Yep.
gotten to that one
Yep.
yet. It is like, well, I've got poop in the fridge. I've got,
Hmm.
you know, dried pea papers on the counter and I've got my
Yeah.
spit is in the freezer. I'm just
Basically,
like,
all your bodily fluids are around the house.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, I'm just a mess over here. Um, yeah, so that was one. It was really interesting to like do everything at the times. And I had
Mhm.
timers set on my phone so that I could get
Yeah.
them all at the right times.
Hmm.
And then getting that information back, that was the one that was kind of hard to receive that information. With
Yeah.
the molder, I'm like, okay, cool. There's going to be a protocol for that. If there's stuff in the gut, there's going to be a protocol for that. But when it came to my hormones, I was like, that could be affected by so many different things. And with the adrenal thing, something that I would love to hear your perspective or how you would describe this. So I think some people think that if they're in a heightened state, they've got high cortisol. So for me, I was in a heightened state. I was having a really hard time regulating. It would be a normal, regular conversation that I'd be in that under normal circumstances, I can process. I'm not flooded, meaning like I'm not activated. My nervous system's not, just like all of a sudden very,
Hmm.
I'm not experiencing really intense sensations, like a normal conversation. Jordan's asking me a question. In this particular state, this particular time of life, however many months ago, that normal conversation would have sent me into tears, would have sent me into panic. Like that's how my body was processing. Like it's a simple question about something that has to do with work or something that has to do with a client, and all of a sudden I'm panicking. My breathing is labored. I'm having to prevent myself from disassociating, where I'm like kind of going out of my body. I feel so much intensity and sensation. Like my entire chest is on fire, my throat's on fire. And the only thing that makes it go away is like if it all just stops. But like life doesn't happen like that. Life doesn't just stop and give me a break.
Yeah.
Especially, we want to have a child, we want to have a family. They don't just, you know what, mom needs a break all day. Like it's
Yeah.
just it's not sustainable. It is not
Yeah.
sustainable. And so getting the information of my adrenals being in the place that they were in, and then the for me, the cortisol was very low. It was like it
Yeah.
started out normal and immediately went to low. So
Mhm.
if you could describe like the difference between the high and the low, and then what the cortisol, basically it being low, what that meant for my other hormones, that then those
Mhm.
other hormones are the ones that are directly involved in me getting pregnant and staying pregnant.
Yeah, so with the different phases of adrenal, we'll just call it adrenal fatigue. And for the sticklers out there, if you're like, oh, it's not the adrenals, it's the brain. Yes, it's a signal from the brain. The HPA axis basically needs to send signals to the adrenals to produce cortisol. When there is an initial stressed state that happens, again, we'll just use a bear to keep it consistent. You see a bear and you're like, oh shit, a bear. Cortisol goes up and DHEA goes up. Okay, so cortisol long term can become catabolic, it'll break things down. DHEA is a precursor to testosterone, which is anabolic. So the two kind of cancel each other out. If your body then does not come back down to homeostasis or normal healthy balance, what's going to happen is your cortisol is going to stay high, DHEA is going to drop low. So you're going to start breaking your body down. And then as that goes on for a period of time, that's a phase two. Or I'm sorry, phase one. Phase two is in now you have like low level ish cortisol, low DHEA. You're going to have high moments, low moments where you're overwhelmed, or you're going to feel like you're a crackhead running around with tons of energy, and then you're going to be plummeted down. That's kind of like the in between warning track. And then a phase three is like where you were, where your cortisol was really low, DHEA was really low as well. So the tricky part with that too is if you're listening to that and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm a phase one, or I feel like I'm a phase two or phase three, they can all have crossover symptoms in each category, which is why testing is so important to figure out where you actually are within this. Now, with how this relates to your hormones, if you go and I'll just tell you to do this, type in steroid hormone pathway on Google. So, like when you're done listening, sort of pause this and go do that. You'll see how all the hormones kind of flow together. And so, the first hormone that you'll have, so you have your cholesterol backing, then you'll make it this hormone called pregnenolone. Pregnenolone is the mother hormone because it gives birth to all other hormones. From there, it goes pregnenolone and then it goes into your progesterone. So for females, progestation, it allows you to have your menstrual cycle. It allows you to become pregnant. It's also one of the most tightly monitored markers through pregnancy to make sure that your body does a good job. And then eventually, baby basically makes its own progesterone, so you don't have to worry so much about it. If your body then doesn't have a healthy relationship with stress, right? Progesterone breaks down into two different molecules, but it goes over to cortisol. If your body constantly feels like you're stressed out, then all of the pregnenolone is going to go from pregnenolone to progesterone to cortisol. And it's just going to steadily flow that way. Like you turn on a flooding, like a hose, and just boom, all the hormones go there. The second piece of that is that you'll have that for the female side of things. And then you'll have this other side that drops in from pregnenolone to DHEA. DHEA then drops down to androsterone, which converts into some testosterone in there. There's eticolinone and some other ones in there as well. And then that goes over and gives you your estrogens too. So everything kind of flows like water when it comes to your hormones. So when you're stressed and your adrenals are not where they're supposed to be, or you're inflamed, your body's constantly throwing all of your hormones, all of your pregnenolone into that stress response because it needs to do that to keep you safe until you get away from the proverbial bear. So your testosterone will drop. You'll have these hormonal imbalances. You could develop estrogen dominance as well because progesterone will drop. You'll still have some estrogen here. And so therefore you'll have some estrogen dominance, or you'll be massively inflamed because your body's breaking itself down. You'll develop, PCOS, or you can have some insulin resistance in there as well, which is also a precursor in PCOS, some endometriosis. All of these things can happen, all just due to that stress response coming from the adrenals. So it is really important if you're just looking for overall health or you're looking to conceive, make sure that those adrenals are at tip top shape so that way you can conceive. And then when you do have baby, that's not going to topple you over in the
Beautiful.
end.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how I interpret it is that if you really stress the fuck out and your cortisol is not in an optimal range, it will, the way that you were describing it to me before is that it will steal the other hormones. It will take the other hormones and it will turn it into, it will try to make it into cortisol so that you do have enough of that hormone to fight the proverbial bear.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
exactly.
so, what do you do? And I think a lot of women would fall into one of those categories, you know what I mean? Because of the way modern society and the world, sets things up as far
Mhm.
as, like there's a lot of reasons why a woman in particular would be stressed the fuck out.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what do you do?
So there's a lot of things to that, right? So we talk about stress, and a lot of people just think stress is just the, if we have financial stress or we have like these external stresses and things that are going on in our lives. So you want to make sure, number one, you have a healthy tribe or a healthy circle of people around you. We're humans. We're designed for human interaction. We want to be surrounded by really good, positive people. That's like step one. Whether that's creating boundaries with family members or friends that may have served a purpose in a season of your life, you want to kind of protect yourself from any additional stress that you may be under. Just wall that stuff off. There are other things you can do from like a spiritual standpoint, whether it's meditation or you can just do some grounding, some breath work, things like that to just kind of drop your state down and kind of calm you down a little bit more. And then the other thing that people don't know too much about, or maybe they do, is you can also be causing more stress to your body than you think. And so people will say, I'm stressed out, but when I exercise, that's my outlet, right? And so if somebody in your adrenal state, right, your adrenals are just completely shut down, you're catabolic already. Things are already breaking down. Your muscle tissue is already breaking down to release amino acids in the body. and then you go and destroy yourself in the gym and push you further into a catabolic state, you're continuously causing that cycle of stress. You're adding another bear into the picture, if you will. So I've had patients, and I actually have one I think you referred to me as well, where I'm like, calm down on the working out, and she's like, I can't. Like that's just. I'm like, trust me, calm down with it. And I just had a call with her yesterday, and she was like, I have such a healthy relationship now with the gym. I'm losing weight. It's just like a 3 week follow up, and like she just started care. She's losing weight. She's feeling great. Her skin feels great. She's doing all these amazing things. So she just eliminated one of the bears in her life. And so what's going to happen is then she's going to have more cortisol naturally. Then it's going to spill over into some of these other hormones so that she'll feel optimal.
Mm.
The other piece that I'll say everybody misses is the gut side of
Mhm.
things. So the infections or even the mold, right? If we have
Mhm.
things within us that are causing inflammation, that inflammation is a
Is
threat to the
stress.
body, it's stress. So it's going to also cause harm to the adrenals. So if we're constantly just doing breath work or meditating work, it's like taking a holistic pill. It's not that it's a bad thing. We're just constantly trying to regulate ourselves when we're just missing the boat on what's actually causing our body to be out of that harmony or out of that homeostasis. So, like in the picture when we ran a stool test with you, we found infection. And so we found an infection that has a high correlation, causation to infertility, miscarriages, basically everything under the sun. So you eliminate that, we got rid of another bear. Like how many bears, I guess, for an analogy, how many bears do you have in your life that we have to that we have to get
There's
rid
a
of?
whole
But
family of bears.
yeah,
And they're
right.
coming
Is it
for me.
Goldilocks into three bears or like what is it? What are
It's
they?
yeah, oh
And
yeah.
yeah, the more you can analyze that, the more you can, really see with the proper filter, what are my bears, what are my stressors. Then we start picking them off one by one. And there's like the protocols and stuff that I use for reestablishing the adrenals were from a Mayo Clinic study that they done, I forget how many years ago, but they were basically like, how can we correct the adrenals while addressing diet and lifestyle to be able to fix the adrenals and send you off into the sunset that your adrenals now produce the proper amount of cortisol, DHEA, etc. So we stack those protocols with some removal protocols, right? Remove the inflammatory foods, remove the infections, get rid of some of those other bears, and then the body just comes together like it's supposed to, and you start healing, and that's when
Mm.
miraculous things can happen.
Hmm. Yeah. Those supplements do not taste good.
I know.
The
My
drops.
yeah,
The
my
drops.
best
I'd have to like do a few breaths,
yeah,
and like I had like a whole little stack. I'd be like, I do this and then I do this and then I swallow and then I drink something.
yeah.
you know,
They're not the best, yeah, but they
you know,
work.
but they work. But that's the thing, that momentary discomfort is so much more
Yeah,
worth it to me than the long-term grief of, oh, but I can't take it because it tastes nasty. Get over yourself.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
stop. The one thing that I did say absolutely no to though was that chasteberry extract.
yeah,
Only after crossing into like actually being pregnant,
yeah,
because there are some things that are absolute no's now that's what has happened. Like I'm a
yeah,
hard no to that. But I mean, I still take it in the pill form. But
yeah,
anyway, so we wound up doing a stool test, which actually, even with the background that I shared about the mold and the whatever, the thing that I have historically been challenged by the most has been gut stuff. I had my gallbladder removed when I was 17. I grew up in South Louisiana, like I said. And so I grew up with a very particular kind of unhealthy diet that was on rinse and repeat every week. I also grew up with a single mom in the military in the generation of kids' cuisines and microwavable meals and hamburger helper, cheeseburger macaroni, to be very specific. That was all that I wanted as a kid. I did not like vegetables. I didn't want to eat. There was no healthy stuff that was ever really presented to me. It wasn't introduced as a kid. And so it has been really interesting to like grow up into an adult, and I'm actually annoyed by it sometimes. Like there's things that I don't like that I'm annoyed that I don't like it, because my life would be
yeah,
easier if I liked it. And then I've grown up and I'm like, you're gonna mature, you're gonna mature your palate, you're gonna expand, you're gonna work on this, Lex. And then I found, my whole favorite group of vegetables, fucks me up. Cruciferous.
Mhm.
So broccoli, cauliflower, bok choy, Brussels sprouts. I love Brussels sprouts. Within 30 minutes, I am swollen like a balloon because of the cruciferous vegetables. And those are essentially the only vegetables I'm interested in as far as taste goes. And
Yeah.
so I've just really had a challenging run with figuring out how to be healthy with regards to my nutrition choices. And I could say, oh, this is my upbringing's fault and yada, yada, yada. But then that actually makes me a victim to my past. And that's not empowering. And that's actually stressful.
Yeah.
And so I have looked at it as like, how can I really expand? And thank goodness I am partnered with Jordan because he eats for health. He doesn't care that it's something different every day.
Yeah.
So, I get to this point where I'm like, it's Japanese sweet potatoes and ground meat and like a salad with nuts and seeds and different things on it. And I'm like, and that's food, like
Yeah.
we're a one item, like one ingredient per, food
The whole
source, like
food.
per
Yeah.
macros essentially. And he's totally fine with it. And I more or less eat for health as well. Pregnant Alexa eats like a toddler, um so far anyway, but I can feel I'm expanding a little bit. My only like so far smelly food aversion is I normally eat salmon a couple times a week.
Mhm.
It's in the fridge right now. I don't even want to open the door to the refrigerator. I'm like, this is terrible.
Yeah.
But the first few weeks of pregnancy, it was I want steak. I want red meat or I don't want it at all. I was like, I want a burger. I want ground
Yeah.
meat. I want like steak. I also really like burritos. And normally I would be like neither here nor there about these things. I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll have
Yeah.
that. But this is like, I must have this now. Um,
Mhm.
so anyway, all kind of bringing it back, gut stuff has been a challenge for me for a variety of reasons. When I was in
Mhm.
college, I was on proton pump inhibitors a couple to a few times a day. I was very stressed out, and I had a really hard time with acid. And then as I've just grown, gotten older, IBS has been an issue. Then constipation. I like went many, many years not knowing what like going to the bathroom, pooping every day. Like, so if you thought this was too much information, y'all listening, like we're really going there. So I had an issue where I was just like, I don't know what it's like to live not constipated. It would be,
Yeah.
I would go and I would feel better. And then 3 days, 2 to 3 days would pass and I would be fucking miserable, like so uncomfortable. And it would always be a struggle. And so that was really, some of those things were really my entrance into holistic medicine. Because if I were to go to a traditional doctor, they would be like, here's a prescription of something that will just fuck it
Mhm.
up worse. Um, so anyway, the gut stuff is not a surprise whenever that's the one that I would say I'm the most nervous about with regards to like what's going to be going on in there again. And
Mhm.
so what are the various things that could show up for people, the most common things that could show up for people, and what is the impact on their life?
Yeah, so I would say that the most common infection that I see is the one of the ones that you had. So the Helicobacter pylori. And when you were talking about back in the day, back in college and stuff, being on proton pump inhibitors, um, H. pylori is found in about 80% of stomach ulcer cases. So it has that impact on actually suppressing stomach acid. And a lot of people will have like acid reflux. They're like, well, I probably have way too much acid in there. So I need Tums, I need antacids or proton pump inhibitors. I need to suppress this stuff. When in reality, your body, when you throw food in it, your body's like, I can't break this down, Alexa. So please get this out. So it tries to like contract and push the food back up into the esophagus. And as a byproduct of that, there's bringing some of that acid and it's burning out the esophagus. And you can have things like I had in high school, which was gastroesophageal reflux disease or GERD. And they're like, oh, you're going to have stomach cancer for sure. So I see H. pylori, but now I'm totally fine. But
Right.
I had H. pylori, and a lot of people have this H. pylori, and it's incredibly easy to spread from person to person. And that's probably what makes it the most difficult, and it's incredibly resilient. If you go medical wise, they try to kill it with 4 antibiotics to try to kill this damn thing, and they screw it up half the time. So when we work on the stool side of things, we always want to make sure, do we have H. pylori, and if so, what do we need to do? What do we need to take to be able to eliminate that infection to make sure that your body is healthy enough to continue on? The other thing that we'll see quite often is just like a kind of a segue from H. pylori, but actually a decrease or a hypochlorhydric state where you don't have enough stomach acid, which means you can't break down your food and you can't sterilize your food. So if you have parasites that you somehow eat from, contaminated food or water, and it goes into your stomach, but you don't have that proper pH or you don't have enough of that acid, well, then the parasite's like, sweet, I can just slide right through and make myself nice and comfy and cozy in this gut right now, and you can't do anything about it. So stomach acid is probably the second thing that we see most commonly, is that we're just completely suppressed. And when you think about what causes low stomach acid, besides the infection, it's really the standard American diet. So we have gluten. Gluten causes a suppression, and I'm going to get nerdy, but these parietal cells that produce the stomach acid in the stomach. So if we shut that down, and then we have stress, which probably 99.999% of Americans are stressed, that suppresses stomach acid. Then we eat fast food because we don't have time to stop. Then we're continuously having this problem over and over again where we're not breaking down the food, and this undigested food goes into the small intestine, large intestine, causes a ton of inflammation. And then we have symptoms where you go to your doctor and they hit you with antifungals or antibiotics. It's literally creating this shitstorm of just inflammation in your gut. And it's no wonder that everyone in the US is dealing with gut issues. It's just they missed the boat. And GI specialists, GI docs drive me freaking crazy. They're one of my least favorite docs that are out there. There may be some good ones, but I want them to start running like tests that I run, or start approaching why these people have these infections to begin with. Don't just be quick to medicate and treat. Find out that underlying cause of why, change the diet and lifestyle, and rebuild that gut from inside out.
Yeah, I mean, that's so tough when if you've got someone who's eating the standard American diet that shows up, like they're not going to go necessarily to someone like you. They're going to show up to whatever
Yeah.
their family practice is that their insurance covers or whatever. And they're going to show up and potentially, I mean, I'm just imagining any of the people that are in the small town that I grew up in, that are clearly overweight, that have, like patchy red skin, or they've got like just clearly looking at them, you wouldn't look at them and go, that person's healthy. And they show up and they have symptoms and they just want the symptom to go away.
Yeah.
And it's not that easy. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
you
not,
know.
and it just buries you deeper and deeper, right? It's like spraying over the check engine light in your car, where you may be able to get away with it for a while, but eventually your car is going to fall apart. But if we're talking about your body, you only have one body, and you can't really get another one. You can't swap. As far as I know, there may be some weird scientists, some mad scientists learn how to swap bodies somewhere, but as far as I know, you can't do that. So you better take care of the body that we were given, and stop spraying over that check engine light. Start doing some simple things. Be your own health advocate. Avoid things like gluten. I know it's so highly emotional, where people will come at me and be like, "Yeah, gluten's amazing," and I'm like, "It's not. It's really not." And just avoid some of these bad things. And we should all know at this point that fast food is not good food, and we need to just be present and not be so darn stressed out, and not be so quick to try to force our bodies to get back to work, right? And I know that you and I, we probably both suffer with this, where if we're down for like a day or even an hour in a day, we're like, shit, I can't get all my stuff done, like this is horrible, what can I do, right? Or like people message you, what can I take for increase in energy? And I'm like, well, eat food, those calories convert to energy, but figure out why your energy was down to begin with. Did you burn yourself out? Did you use all your fuel for tomorrow today already? Like, what are you doing? So if we can just switch our mindset and realize, medicine is there in trauma and in like first aid emergencies. You break a bone, if your gallbladder is about to explode or your appendix is about, then go do that. But then also know that the choices and decisions that you made up until that point is what brought you there. So now you have to go hindsight and be like, what bad choices did I make that I can change? How can I empower myself to get my health back on track, so it's not just my gallbladder or my appendix that gets removed, right? That the rest of my body can survive and thrive. And when we talked last time, I don't even, if I remember correctly, you weren't even taking bile salts or anything
Oh,
from the
yeah.
gallbladder.
I'm going to be
It had
taking
been
bile salts
years.
my entire life.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
I've
And it'll tell you
surrendered.
that.
I no, I was not. I was 30, over 30 years old before, and I was having issues. Actually, I was having issues, and it was Jordan. It was Jordan's
Mhm,
research and like me having all these symptoms and complaints and all this stuff. And he at some point found ox bile in the
mhm,
list, and like milk thistle and like something else.
mhm,
And he was like, I'm gonna just gonna order this supplement. And so I was taking it, but I didn't put any stock in it because like no
mhm.
professional told me.
Yeah.
And though Jordan is like bona fide biohacker bro and is obsessed with supplements and takes like
Yeah.
no less than 50 to 60 a day by his own accord. No one has told him to.
Yeah.
And so he's just, as time goes by, definitely have learned to trust him more and more. But then I wound up
Mhm,
doing some holistic health stuff, my initial wave, and it was like, you need to be taking, you know, the LVGB or the just bile
mhm,
salts and that kind of thing. And then it's
mhm,
really hit me like I'm going to be taking this probably my whole life in different amounts, um,
mhm.
to help with the fact that I don't have
Yeah.
an organ in my body that when I was 17, they told me I didn't need, that it was,
Think about yeah, good,
yeah,
good.
I didn't need it. And I was going to function perfectly and exactly as and that the pancreas and this and the liver and all this is just going to make up for it. And it's going to be no big deal. And at 17, my mom's there. She had just been to the ER with me, having a gallbladder attack. And I
Mhm.
felt like my insides were just like ripping apart, like I was being stabbed. And I've never even been stabbed, but if I can imagine that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just need to help her. I just need to do
Mhm.
whatever the doctor says, basically. You know, like my mom grew up in
Yeah.
that era of like, you do what the doctor says. And the doctor said this
Mhm.
has to come out, that I had no other option. And now as an adult, if that were to be happening, I would go seek many other opinions. You know, I'd
Yeah.
start with root cause. Is there any way that I could clear gallstones without having to remove this organ? Like, what does that look like? But they basically told me if you don't get it removed, you'll have attacks at random, and they are excruciating, like
Mhm.
excruciatingly painful. And still the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And the doctors there, the nurses there were telling me that women who describe gallbladder attack pain
Yeah.
and labor describe gallbladder attack pain being worse than
Yeah.
labor pains. And so I'm like, I just remember that from the doctor's office. So I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to have this at random. And I'm 17 at the time, I'm about to go to college, you know?
Mhm.
And so they were basically like, if you don't get it out, the worst case scenario is a gallstone gets trapped in the duct. It goes towards
Mhm.
the pancreas. You get pancreatitis. You wind up having to have emergency surgery, and you have a huge scar, and potentially way more complications. So I'm getting this information, and I'm like, basically, I'm so terrified that I'm like, all
Yeah.
right, when's the surgery? You know, and here I am in my mid 30s, and I'm like still dealing with the effects of that.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about what the gallbladder is used for, right? Gallbladder is used to emulsify fats.
Yeah.
And so, what also needs fats to be created? Your hormones, your nervous system, your brain, right? So, if you're not able to break down and emulsify these fats, you're just living life just hoping that you're going to get enough in terms of hormones and, that your liver can try to maybe produce a little bit of extra cholesterol to make up for that demand. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the gallbladder, we see a lot of people suffering with further digestive issues or infertility just from the fact that they don't have one. And so
Yeah.
and it's a simple fix. It's not like you have to take drops of Chase Tree or anything or Vitex. It's not
So
disgusting,
bad.
right? So, but you can
So
just
bad.
supplement in with that, and you're like, okay,
Yeah,
good. Like I'm good.
totally.
Digestion's a lot better, and it could just be that little tweak, and then your
Yeah,
digestion is perfect after.
totally. Okay, so kind of to round out our combo, and I like that we got to stop and like use me as a point of reference, because I think
Yeah,
sometimes without a real point of reference, it just sounds like a bunch of abstract stuff. But like if I
sure.
say what my symptoms were, and I say
Mhm.
my lifestyle, and I say like what, I think that that kind of helps people like make it more real and more tangible
Mhm.
for them. So when we first got started, I told you that I'm going to get started with these protocols, but I don't want to wait to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I was nervous, you know? I'm like, I want to
Mhm.
start this process, and I want to do the supplements. And if anyone's been following me on social media and has been following me on on Instagram, then you will have seen like I've done some unboxing of all the different supplements because,
Mhm.
Jordan has had supplements that he's been on as well. And then I have them. And so I was like showcasing some of them, not showing y'all my exact protocol because I don't want to show you like
Sure.
the label of the bottle and you think that that's the thing that's going to help you when really this was my prescription. Like this was what you gave to
Exactly.
me. And it might not be the same thing for other people. Maybe similar, but maybe not exactly the same. So
Right.
anyway, I wanted to get started. I wanted to feel proactive. I think I started supplementing in like January or like maybe early February and wound up pregnant at the end of March. So,
Yeah.
just let's kind of like double click on that. What did that look like? Because, ideally I asked you, like ideally, how long would I be on this before, you would say to get pregnant and it was kind of like 6 months from now and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm going to be 35. I got to get this process started. You want me to be I know that's not an old lady y'all, but y'all
Yeah.
know if you're
Mhm.
listening, the clusterfuck of the mental stories and the spiraling that can happen and like the age and all of that. I'm like, if you make me wait until then, I will be AMA, advanced maternal age, Doc Jacques.
Yeah.
And I technically am anyway because I will be 35 by the time baby comes, but
Mhm.
yeah, so just like what that was like, somebody wanting to come to you for a particular reason and then like
Mhm.
what if like whoops, pregnant happens, but it's not actually whoops because
Yeah.
like we did the thing that
Yeah.
equals baby. Um, so it's just not a whoops and it's not like a
Yeah.
surprise. It was like, oh shit, it worked.
Yeah. It's like you figured
And
out the
then
cheat code. You're like, "Oh, there it is."
yeah, and then what does that look like with regards to like shifting health, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So anytime that we want to work on conceiving, we in an ideal world, we want to give at least like 3 months or so and like the minimum because you're basically going to be conceiving from the egg from 3 months prior. So depending on what your level is of health, you're pulling a one from there, and then you get pregnant there. So when we were talking about your time frame, that was based off, and I'm really glad that you said that. Like, it's not a one size fits all for pregnancies. So it's not like, hey Alexa, what did you take so I can take those too, so I can also get pregnant. It's how can I optimize my body to be able to conceive. So we're going along, and I remember you sent me a message on Instagram. I think it was over the weekend. I'm like, and I'm like, oh damn, sweet. Like pregnancy test,
I
or
sent you the
you were
positive
you were
pregnancy test. I was like, oh
curious
shit.
first. You're like, I think something's gonna happen this cycle. I'm not quite sure, but things are feeling different. Yeah. Then you send me the picture. I'm like, awesome, fantastic. Like we did it. We're there. So it's not like a whoops. It's like good. We made it to our goal. Like our goal was to be able to conceive. Now it's just adaptation. What do we need to switch? What do we need to change in terms of your protocol to help to support you with your fertility journey? You were already taking plenty of things for like the prenatals and the vitamins and things like that you needed to have a healthy conception and as well as pregnancy. And then it was just making some changes with, are there certain supplements that you would need to come off of so that we're not killing or removing while we're in that first trimester to get you through into just becoming pregnant and baby being self-sufficient. So with the way when I know people's goals, I have an idea, and you're not the first person this has happened to either. This happens quite frequently, actually. It's like, oh, and I've had one friend. It was like 6 years ago or so when I started doing this stuff. She texted me like 2 months into care and apologized for getting pregnant, and I'm like, are you stupid? Like, I love you. Like, this is awesome. Like, this is exactly what we were going for. She's like, but I didn't get a chance to detox before I conceived. I'm like, you're fine, but baby comes out perfectly healthy, perfectly naturally. Like everything goes the way that it's supposed to. So you just have to know. And if you're working with somebody, whether it's working with me or another functional doctor, and I told you this, like I have to be one of the first people to know that you conceive so we can change different doses. I don't want to push certain hormones. I don't want to push your adrenals to do certain things or rev you up. I want to basically bring you back down into that nice homeostatic balance and then maintain, trying to do the healthier diet and things, which, it's pregnant. You're going to have these cravings and things, but making sure you're prioritizing sleep, prioritizing proper movement, and really focusing on that diet and lifestyle as the main staple piece while supplementing in nutrients that you need to just have a healthy pregnancy.
Yeah. And then there were some supplements that were perfectly fine for me to continue
Yeah.
taking.
Mhm.
However, they have a smell. And so I had to stop those just for a
Yeah.
little while. They have such a smell, which not pregnant Alexa's like, Yeah, it's got a smell, but no big deal. Like I would take them and it would be literally no big deal.
Yeah.
Pregnant Alexa, it has such a smell that even Jordan taking it is a smell. And then I could
Yeah.
smell it on his skin and I could smell it on his
Mhm.
breath. And then I wanted to be nowhere around him until I basically had to message you and be like, we both have to come off of this
Yep.
until I can stomach smelling it at this like
Yeah.
super intense level. So, somebody said recently, not directly to me, but I read this that don't let the first trimester dictate your entire pregnancy. Like don't
Yeah.
let what happens in your first trimester just like be the thing that determines all of what your pregnancy is going to be like. And I was telling you before we started recording that I know that second trimester, it's like in the next week, I
Mhm.
crossover, which feels really special to say. Um, and I imagine that I will turn a corner at some point and I'll have some of my energy back and I will have less aversions to smells and different things. And I'm not wishing any part of this pregnancy to just hurry up because I waited a long time for this, you know? Like I waited
Yeah.
until I was a certain level of perceived maturity on my part. I waited until I was in a relationship with someone that I knew would never leave his children and who would do anything for his family and for me and for our relationship. I waited. And this has been the trade-off, is like, but will I I'm starting this process mid 30s. I don't know what my fertility is like. I don't know how easy this is going to be for me. I don't know what the timeline's going to look like. It has been more than anything such a huge lesson in surrender because I can't control really any of it if I'm honest. I can try to optimize and I can chart and I can map and I can go, oh, here's my LH surge and here's my window of opportunity. Babe, come here. Like I can control some of those things. But like when it actually happens, and how it happens and like God's got a plan and
Mhm.
like I'm like a willing participant in it, but I still don't control any part of it. You know what I mean? Like it is
Yeah.
a major lesson in surrender. And so yeah, this whole thing has just been really special. So I don't want to like rush and be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait until the first trimester is over.
Yeah.
No, like one day at a time, one day at a time. And then when this like corner, I turn it, and I'm a pregnant goddess. At least that's, this is the joke
You
in
got
the
it. Yeah.
family. I'm gonna turn into a I'm gonna love it, every single part of it. And I'm gonna feel like my body, I'm just gonna be like, look at me. I look so stunning. It doesn't look like I've just like I have a lot of gas or like I've just eaten a large meal.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to being a bit more available mentally and physically and all of that, to move a little more. I've just started picking it back up, going for long walks again. We made it to the gym. Not overdoing it or anything. We're looking at, some prenatal yoga classes, stuff to move a little bit slower, all that. Um, and I'm at the same time, I'm really grateful for what this process has done for my quality of life. I don't feel great, but at the same time, I love how I am with myself as pregnant and leading up to pregnant. After having that like crash at the end of 2022,
Mhm.
I am in the middle of the day and I could do a lot of things and I choose to go lay down. I choose to grab my book. I'm choosing to do things differently. And I think, outside of supplementation and like focusing on this, I think that is one of the other like huge pieces because that was something I was really missing before going into this,
Yeah.
is really treating myself with kindness and asking myself, what do you need right now? I was missing a big part of my feminine essence and a big part of my feminine energy in the name of wanting to just like close out the year in a certain way and make sure I delivered all the things that I agree to deliver and all these things. And it was just having such a hard effect on me in my life. And so even in the prep work, I felt like the little guy was telling me, it's the meaning that I give it, right? With the miscarriage, that I felt like it
Mhm.
was him all along. Like,
Yeah.
if you want this, I'm going to just go ahead and hit the test button because if you want me, like, if you say you're ready, let's just trial
Yeah.
this out. Like he chose me as his mom. So he knows.
Yep.
Like,
He
here's your
knows what he
test
signed up
run.
for.
Here's your test run, mom. Like, get your shit together. I'm coming. This is just what was in my journey that I needed in order to like kind of click these last things into place. And so, yeah, I imagine if I would have waited another couple of months to get that conception check, I
Mhm.
might feel a little bit different, but I also think that it happened exactly when it was supposed to happen. And I'm super grateful. And I'm grateful to have, you know, holistic care like you on my side. And the team that's kind of forming here, with regards to my care is also
Yeah.
really special as well, where we're almost 100% going to go the home birth route. We will see. Um,
Yeah.
we've got to just like map out kind of boring stuff like cost of what home birth will be versus what insurance would cover if I went to the
Yeah.
hospital, and just like make sure we're making a decision that's like really
Mhm.
what's best for our family. And if it's
Sure.
marginal, then it's you were going to go, that's like that last little bit that we want to just make sure we do our due diligence. But
Yeah.
yeah, it feels really good to know that like health and the pregnancy and our family and all that is a top priority, and we actually treat it like it's a top priority. And of course, my habits around all of these things may totally change whenever a little one is in our world. And so check with me in like a year, but it feels really good to be going into parenthood with this as a top priority. You know what I mean? And focusing on this being a top priority for our little one that's not, that's like not on the outside yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for being in our corner for Jordan and I, and for so many people in this community. Because like
Mhm.
we were chatting before, like there's been a number of people that I have brought you on the show. This is the second time I've shared about my journey on social media, and people have seen it and they've reached out to you, and that is
Yeah.
so exciting to me that they are going to take that leap and or take that just first step in reaching out to
Yeah.
you and getting on a free like 15-minute consultation just to see, just to dip their toe even
Right.
in what could holistic health look like for them. um and then I know that there's been a handful of people in the community, like you mentioned someone a little while ago, that has fully taken the plunge. And within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the decisions that they're making, the choices that they're making for themselves, or even the supplement protocol, even a month in, they're like, wow, I'm starting to feel better. And that's so empowering. You know what I mean? Because the alternative
Yeah.
is you don't feel good. You go some more, let's say, traditional routes for the US, and it's
Right.
symptom, it's band-aids, and it doesn't leave you feeling super empowered, like you even know yourself or know what's going on. And at this point, I feel like I know myself from the inside out in a very intimate way, and it feels so good. So thank you for playing a
Absolutely.
huge role for that, for me, for our family, for Jordan, and then of course for a number of our community members as well.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. I always felt like, and we talked about this beforehand. Like, this is something that I feel like I was called to do. And it just kind of fell into my lap with how we created these protocols and procedures, and we've been helping people for the last almost 10 years now doing this work, and I love it. And I love seeing your results. I love seeing other people's results, and I'm tired of people functioning less than their 100% potential. And there's more for you out there. If you're ignoring it, if you're just going traditional, like you said, what like American traditional, you're not at 100%. You're just getting by. So if you're open to putting the work in, to figuring out what those bears are in your life, there's so much more for you out there, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah. All right. So if people want to reach you, I know they can find you at Doc Jacque on Instagram.
Mhm.
They will link your website in the show notes. I'll also link your free 15-minute consultation in the show notes as well. Is there anything, any last thing that you want to share with our audience, or a way that you'd like to connect with them?
Yeah, I mean, just reach out in any way you can. Just like Lex was saying, if you shoot me a message in DMs, it's Doc_Jock. Shoot me a message in DMs. Let me know how you heard about us, and if you want that 15-minute call, just hit that link. 15-minute calls are awesome because you get to get a feel for what I bring to the table and how we can fit together. And in those 15 minutes, are we a good fit for each other or not? And if so, at least you didn't have anything to waste. Just 15 minutes. Everyone can spare that. And if you need to move on, go for it. If you want to work with me, awesome. We can go from there.
Great. I love it. I love it so much. Thank you again for sharing your wisdom and spending your time. I know it wasn't the most convenient time with where you're at in the world and travel and everything, and so
Yeah.
I super appreciate you and making this episode happen. Thank you.
Thank you.